King Leopold's Congo Genocide versus Nazi Germany. Why one faced justice. Welcome to My Blackness 100, the channel that champions Black excellence, rewrites African and diaspora stories, and puts truth where the world has long hidden lies. If you believe Africa deserves to rise, to lead, and to claim its rightful place in global history, stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see Central Africa, Europe, and the machinery of power itself. In this video, we set two systems side by side, a modern state that built death camps and a European monarch's private empire that turned Congolese lives into rubber quotas. We'll follow the motives, the methods, and the money, and confront the question history keeps dodging. Why were there no arrests after the Congo Free State's terror? By the end, you'll see how ideology became law in Europe, how profit became law in the Congo, and what real accountability should look like now. If this is the kind of honest history you want more of, share and subscribe to My Blackness 100, because our story deserves to be heard everywhere. 1. Motives and intent. Ideology versus extraction. Hitler built a program of racial extermination. He named Jews as enemies. He turned bigotry into law. He used ghettos to isolate. He used trains to deport. He used camps to kill. The purpose was elimination. The machine called murder cleansing. Ideology fueled it. Policy carried it out. The result was genocide by design. Leopold built a program of extraction. He called it civilization. He sold it as progress. On the ground, it was profit at any cost. Rubber ruled every choice. Ivory sweetened the ledger. The force public enforced quotas. Agents seized hostages. Men were flogged. Villages burned. Hands were cut to count bullets. Mothers were leverage. Children were bargaining chips. Communities fractured. This violence was not abstract. It was intimate. It was daily. It lasted for decades. It gnawed at food, time, and hope. It dismantled life slowly and completely. In lived experience, it was deeper and longer. In reach, it was total within the territory. In consequence, it broke the social fabric. And when the scandal rose, no arrests came. No courtroom opened. No architect of the system faced a judge. The world turned away. The world let profit silence justice. 2. Law, labels, and the weight of words. The Holocaust shaped modern law. Raphael Lemkin coined genocide. The United Nations codified it in 1948. Trials followed. Courts named criminals. Sentences fell. The world declared a principle. Mass murder would meet law. Paper trails became evidence. Titles became charges. Even if incomplete, justice spoke. The Congo Free State predated that language. The lack of a word did not reduce the crime. Murder remained murder. Torture remained torture. Hostage-taking remained hostage-taking. The system dismantled food networks. It wrecked kinship ties. It engineered famine. It spread disease. It ended births. It did so with foreknowledge. It did so for gain. Scholars debate labels. Survivors did not. They buried their dead. They rebuilt without aid. They lived with scars and empty chairs. The international order looked on. It cited treaties. It cited sovereignty. It cited complexity. Then it chose quiet. If the world could later indict Nazis, why did it not indict the men who built the Congo system? Were African lives counted less? Did imperial interests weigh more than justice? The answer shows in the record. There were reports. There were photographs. There was outrage. Yet there were no arrests. Silence replaced verdicts. Annexation replaced trials. 3. Primary targets: Jews under Nazi rule, Congolese communities under rubber quotas. Nazi policy targeted Jews for annihilation. It also targeted Roma and Sinti. It killed people with disabilities. It murdered millions of Slavic civilians and prisoners of war. The target was named. The campaign was continent-wide. The focus was relentless. The intent was clear. The outcome was mass death. Leopold's policy targeted labor, land, and time. It targeted villages near rubber. It targeted families as leverage. It targeted the daily bread. Quotas ignored ethnicity. The whip did not ask for clan. The hostage post did not check lineage. The ledger tracked kilograms, not people. But every kilogram had a face. Every shipment had a missing father. Every dividend had a mother's tears. Entire villages suffered collective punishment. Failure in the field invited flames in the night. The system treated Congolese people as expendable fuel. It took their bodies for profit. It took their seasons for quotas. It took their futures for rubber. If a policy empties a people to fill a ledger, what excuse removes handcuffs? None. Yet no handcuffs came. No officer's name entered a docket. No concession chief faced cross-examination. The targets were clear. The pain was total. The law stayed silent. 4. Timeframe and sovereignty, a modern nation-state versus a personal colony. The Holocaust ran from 1933 to 1945. A modern state built it. Ministries coordinated it. Railways fed it. Camps completed it. Bureaucracy wrote it down. Lists recorded victims. Schedules recorded trains. Memos recorded orders. When the state fell, the paper remained. Courts followed the paper to people. Trials named names. Even when many escaped, some faced judgment. The Congo Free State ran from 1885 to 1908. It was a personal colony. One king owned a country. He hired officers. He raised a private army. He granted concessions. He collected dividends. Sovereignty bent to his signature. Quotas defined life. Violence guarded quotas. When a scandal erupted, Belgium annexed the territory. The personal state became a national colony. The graves did not move. The losses did not shrink. The guilt did not vanish. Yet the remedy was paperwork, not prosecution. Survivors received administration, not justice. The annexation changed flags. It did not change accountability. No court asked the basic questions. Who set the quotas? Who ordered the hostage posts? Who burned the villages? Who cut the hands? Why did a change of ownership replace a search for guilt? 5. Methods of violence: industrial extermination and colonial terror. The Holocaust used shootings, starvation, disease, and gas. Trains moved victims like freight. Camps processed people like units. Doctors selected who labored and who died. Engineers designed flow. Clerks recorded numbers. Murder became a process. It was industrial in mindset and method. It was efficient only in cruelty. It crossed borders with ease. It devoured communities with speed. The Congo Free State used forced labor and hostage-taking. It used the lash and the gun. It burned villages to break resistance. It cut hands to count bullets. It destroyed crops to create hunger. It moved troops by river to spread fear. It kept women at posts until men delivered rubber. It turned home into prison. It turned a forest into a trap. It made every day a negotiation between life and quota. It was not a factory of death. It was a field of death. It was slow and intimate. It was public and personal. Children watched fathers whipped. Mothers watched children starve. The method broke the will and then broke the body. It left no safe hour. It lasted for years and years. And when the world heard, it offered reforms, not indictments. A photograph pierced hearts. It did not open a courtroom. The method was known. The perpetrators were known. Still, no trials came. 6. Death toll and counting the dead. Precision in Europe, silence in the Congo. The Holocaust's numbers are precise. About 6 million Jews were murdered. Records support this. Demography supports this. Testimony supports this. Names fill pages. Places match coordinates. Dates fit calendars. Precision protects memory. Precision rebukes denial. Precision powers education and law. The Congo Free State's numbers are harder. The system destroyed records. The system hid records. The system never counted lives it did not value. Demographers still trace a population collapse of millions. Violence killed. Hunger killed. Disease killed. The fall in births multiplied the toll. The very uncertainty indicts the crime. A system so vast that it breaks measurement deepens, not lessens its severity. The absence of numbers does not mean the absence of the dead. The silence in ledgers does not mean the silence in homes. Courts convict without national censuses. Juries convict without perfect data. Why did uncertainty here become a shield? Why did it block arrests? The answer lies in power. Power wrote the ledgers. Power burnt the ledgers. Power then asked for ledgers as proof. The circle closed. Justice fell through the gap. 7. Geographic scope. Continental reach versus concentrated extraction. The Holocaust spread across Europe. Deportations crossed frontiers. Ghettos rose in city after city. Camps dotted maps. Killing pits marked forests. Collaboration and coercion linked states and allies. The scale was continental. The web was wide. The Congo Free State concentrated pain inside one vast territory. Rivers became arteries of terror. Rubber districts bore the heaviest weight. Steamers carried loot out and weapons in. Roads carried agents deep into villages. The personal state made cruelty local and inescapable. Every district knew its commander. Every commander knew his targets. The concentration should have aided law. Witnesses knew names. Concession maps marked zones. Ranks and postings existed. Yet Belgium issued reforms, not warrants. It changed administration. It did not seek accountability. Concentration delivered clarity. The state rejected clarity. It chose continuity. It saved a system. It allowed guilt to evaporate. 8. Perpetrator structures, bureaucracy in Berlin, concessions, and the force public in the Congo. Nazi killing required many offices. The police gathered victims. Intelligence tracked targets. Rail scheduled trains. The SS ran camps. Local collaborators aided arrests. The structure was complex. The structure left traces. After 1945, prosecutors mapped the structure. They turned signatures into evidence. They turned procedures into a chain of guilt. Not all paid. Many escaped. But the idea of legal responsibility took form. Leopold's Congo used concessions and the force public. Concession companies took territories. They set quotas. They demanded results. District officers enforced demands. The force public supplied fear. Bonuses rewarded brutality. Promotions followed output. The king watched the numbers. He smiled at dividends. He silenced critics with propaganda. Missionaries protested. Activists wrote. The pattern was known. The chain of command was clear. It ran from a hostage post to a district office. It ran from a district office to a concession board. It ran from a boardroom to the king. When pressure grew, Leopold ceded the colony to Belgium. He died a year later. With him went the last easy target for a dock. The structure remained a fog by design. It blurred lines between public power and private profit. It made prosecution inconvenient. It made impunity likely. The result was predictable. No arrests came. 9. Exposure, backlash, and international response. Nuremberg in Europe. Annexation without justice in Congo. The Holocaust ended with Allied victory. Soldiers opened camps. Cameras filmed bodies. Records filled trucks. Witnesses testified. Courts convened. Judges pronounced crimes against humanity. Some men were hanged. Others were jailed. Many were never tried. Still, the precedent stood. Atrocity could meet law. Leaders could face judges. The idea entered the world's conscience. Congo's scandal broke earlier. Roger Casement wrote a report. Alice Seeley Harris showed photographs. Pamphlets spread. Meetings filled halls. The public was shocked. Newspapers told stories. Parliaments debated. Belgium annexed the Congo Free State in 1908. The personal colony ended. The national colony began. The violence ebbed in some places. New forms of exploitation rose in others. A moral victory turned into an administrative fix. No tribunal met. No colonel stood in a dock. No concession director confessed a quota. No aristocrat faced cross-examination. Europe moved on. Companies kept profits. Archives stayed closed or incomplete. Survivors rebuilt alone. The path chosen was reform without justice. It taught the wrong lesson. It taught that a scandal can be managed. It taught that a transfer of power can erase a trail of guilt. It taught that African grief could be acknowledged and ignored at the same time. 10. Documentation, memory, and the politics of evidence. Archives that accuse and archives that disappear. The Holocaust left dense archives. Transport lists survive. Camp registers survive. Perpetrator photos survive. Survivor accounts multiply. Film shot by liberators shocks new generations. The archive arms teachers. It anchors museums. It pushes back against denial. It supports legal history. It turns memory into defense. The Congo Free State left searing photographs and blunt reports. It left letters and diaries. It left missionary journals. It also left gaps. Ledgers disappeared. Files were destroyed. Many records were never kept. The gaps were not accidents. They were tactics. They were policy. Missing paper became a shield. Judges need chains of custody. Officials refuse chains. Courts need documents. Offices destroyed them. What remains is still powerful. The patterns are clear. Hostages for quotas. Mutilations for ammunition accounting. Villages razed to teach fear. Crops destroyed to force labor. These patterns are evidence. They are consistent. They are widespread. They point to intent. They point to command. They point to profit. They should have triggered arrests. They did not. The politics of evidence protected the perpetrators. The burden fell on the victims to prove the perpetrators' paperwork. That is not justice. That is a trap. 11. Framing severity. Why the Congo Free State was so severe and still ignored. Severity rests on more than numbers. Severity rests on duration, on intimacy, on daily coercion, on the collapse of family life, on the erasure of births, on the destruction of food systems, on the reach into every hut, on the total absence of justice. The Congo Free State lasted over 2 decades. It embedded terror in routine. It turned wives into hostages. It turned children into collateral. It made hunger a policy tool. It normalized mutilation as counting. It erased names before they appeared in any record. It made the village itself a prison. It made the forest a place of dread. It taught that resistance invited starvation. It taught that compliance invited more demands. It reached into the private life of everyone near rubber. It shattered rituals. It stunted generations. It silenced lullabies. It replaced rest with fear. And when exposure came, the world chose annexation over arrests. That choice confirmed the severity. It told victims they were negotiable. It told perpetrators they were safe. It told history that African suffering could be filed away. 12. The accountability gap. Why no arrests came. There was no international court in 1908. That is true. But Belgium had courts. It had prosecutors. It had names and ranks. It had concession charters. It had photographs. It had testimonies. It had motive. It had means. It had effects. It had jurisdiction. It did not act. Why? Imperial complicity weighed heavily. Other empires ran brutal systems too. A trial in Brussels could echo in Paris, Lisbon, or Berlin. Political elites feared that mirror. Racism shaped empathy. Black testimony counted less in European courts. Corporate secrecy hid data. Concession contracts shielded executives. The force public controlled information. Records were destroyed. The annexing state inherited the apparatus it would have to prosecute. Conflict of interest blocked momentum. Leopold died. The symbol vanished. The appetite for reckoning vanished with him. Belgium chose stability. Europe chose continuity. The result was predictable. No arrests. No trials. No sentences. Only reforms shaped by the same powers that profited from the crime. 13. What this teaches: name, map, demand. Name the crime with clarity. It was not mismanagement. It was not excess. It was not a few bad men on the frontier. It was a design system. It linked quotas to punishment. It linked punishment to profit. It used a private state to shield a public scandal. Map the chain with care. Show the hostage post. Show the district office. Show the concession board. Show the monarch's cabinet. Draw the line from a bleeding vine to a European dividend. Demand accountability that matches the harm. Open archives. Follow money. Ask museums to prove the sources of rubber-era artifacts. Ask companies to reveal ledgers. Ask states to publish colonial files. Press for memorials. Press for reparations. Press for formal apologies tied to policy. Reject the myth that annexation was justice. Reject the myth that missing records mean missing guilt. Teach students to translate euphemisms. Quota meant the risk of a child never seeing a parent again. Discipline meant infection from the lash. Ammunition accounting meant severed hands. Once language is clear, denial loses ground. Once patterns are named, responsibility gains shape. 14. Why this comparison matters and why the world looked away. Comparing atrocities is not a contest. It is a method. It reveals how power acts. It reveals how impunity survives. It reveals how law bends to force. The Holocaust shows ideology turned into industrial murder. It shows a continent organized for death. It shows that courts can speak after the guns fall silent. The Congo Free State shows profit turned into colonial terror. It shows a country engineered for extraction. It shows that courts can be silent when empire stands to lose. The world looked away from Congo because empire wrote the rules. It controlled courts. It controlled news. It controlled access to evidence. It wore a mask called civilization. It promised reform while keeping revenue. The result was a perfect storm for impunity. The victims were African. The perpetrators were European. The balance of power decided the balance of justice. That is the hard truth. That is the enduring lesson. 15. The unanswered question. Where are the indictments? Who signed the quotas that starved villages? Who ordered the hostage posts that broke families? Who commanded the units that burned fields? Who devised the mutilation metrics for ammunition? Who banked the dividends that rose as the dead rose? Who wrote the propaganda that hid the crimes? Where are these names in court records? Where are the indictments? Annexation is not an answer. Administrative reform is not a verdict. A new flag is not justice. Justice requires names, charges, evidence, and sentences. The Congo Free State produced the evidence in blood and hunger. The world declined to write the names. The world declined to file the charges. That is why this history still stings. That is why survivors' descendants still ask. That is why a just future still calls for a legal past. 16. 10 clear statements for the record. The Congo Free State was a system. It ran on profit. It used quotas as a whip. It used hostages as leverage. It made hunger a tool. It normalized mutilation. It shattered families. It lasted for decades. It ended in annexation. It saw no arrests. The Holocaust was a system. It ran on ideology. It used laws as a cage. It used trains as funnels. It used camps as factories of death. It destroyed communities across a continent. It ended in military defeat. It saw trials, even if partial. Both were mass crimes. Both were human-made. Both were preventable. But only one faced courts in its time. Only one saw judges speak. The other saw paperwork change hands. That difference is not neutral. It is not a footnote. It is itself an injustice. 17. Final through line for the script. Profit without law creates terror. Ideology without restraint creates extermination. The Congo Free State fused profit and punishment every day. It did so for years. It did so in homes, fields, and forests. It did so with a private army. It did so with a king's signature. The Holocaust fused hatred and bureaucracy in a war. It did so across nations. It did so at speed and scale. Both left ruins. Both left graves. But the Congo Free State added another wound. It added impunity. It taught the world that you can destroy a people's safety, seize their labor, starve their children, and mutilate their bodies, and later hide behind annexation. That message still travels. It still distorts law. It still haunts policy. The answer is simple to say and hard to do. Name the harm, map the chain, demand the docket, refuse the silence, refuse the shuffle, refuse the lie that missing ledgers mean missing guilt. Justice delayed is not justice denied only. It is justice designed to fail. The Congo Free State proved the design. The world approved the result. That is why this history must be told in full voice, with clear lines, and with one question repeated until it breaks the wall. Where are the arrests? Justice did not come to the Congo Free State. Not in courts, not in names, not in sentences. That silence is a wound that still bleeds. We don't close it by looking away. We close it by remembering, by teaching, and by demanding the docket that never came. If this moved you, don't let it end here. Like this video, so the story travels. Share it with a friend, a teacher, a community group. Subscribe to My Blackness 100 and join a channel that refuses to let our history be footnotes. Add your voice below. Should there be a modern reckoning? What does real accountability look like? Archives opened, reparations pursued, names finally read in court. Your comment can spark the next investigation, the next lesson plan, the next policy change. Stay with My Blackness 100 for more powerful stories on Black empowerment. Watch our deep dives on colonial economies, anti-colonial resistance, human rights campaigns, and the victories our ancestors fought for. Every view strengthens the record. Every share breaks another wall of silence. We remember, we demand, we act. Like, share, subscribe to My Blackness 100, and keep watching to power a future where our history speaks and justice answers.